And you've got a bold vision. I love the website. 100 million cows by 2030. Decarbonize 100 million cows by 2030.
Correct. It's bold, but that's our mission.
Welcome to Agbioscience, the #1 podcast in the world for innovation in food, animal health, plant science, ag tech, and agriculture. Here is your host, Agrinovus CEO, Mitch Frazier.
Welcome back to Agbioscience. Sustainability in Agbioscience requires two key inputs, environmental and economic. Specifically in animal health, a lot of innovation happening in sustainability, and one company leading that charge joins us today. Welcome, Lucas Huntimer, Dr. Lucas Huntimer, head of R&D for Rumin8. Lucas.
Great.
Welcome to Agbioscience.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mitch.
Real glad you're here. Last time we saw each other, we were in Boston talking all things animal health innovation. Now you're here. These two inputs to the output. We talk sustainability. You and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, where people talk sustainability and we focus on environmental. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important piece. Some of the work you're doing focus clearly there. But it also, to be durable, to be lasting, has to deliver environmental and economic sustainability. Talk more about this problem, these two halves of the whole that you and the team at Rumin8 are tackling.
Yeah, it's a great setup in sustainability in agriculture, in particular in animal health, where we're focused on. It has a lot of different definitions. Yeah. Particularly, we are interested in reducing greenhouse gas emissions in cattle production at Rumin8. So we are focused on bringing a product to the market that can be fed to cattle that reduces methane emissions specifically. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. It's estimated that cattle produce about 3.7% of total greenhouse gas emissions through enteric methane. Wow. And this is by no fault of their own. They're exquisite mechanisms at being able to take in low quality feed and forage and turn that into energy. One of that piece of that, though, is a byproduct of methane. So essentially, if we can harness and control methane production, turn that back into energy for the animal, it drives that value part of the equation for the producer. So it's approximately 5 to 10% of methane emission is estimated to be lost in productivity and efficiency of the animal. So if you're able to redirect methane emission back into productivity, you can provide that return on investment for use of a product to the producer.
That's incredible. I've never heard it described that way. So when you look at methane reduction in cattle, if you can harness that through feed additive or whatever it may be, it's not just expelled, you can actually turn it back into power for the cow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. So through a combination of a feed additive approach like this, as well as different diet influence, you can redirect into productivity. So, and that's the central thesis of what we're trying to build as a startup.
Talk more about what the solution actually is. Talk feed additive. Give us a use case. Show us how it would work. Explain it out.
Sure. So really, our company was founded around this idea and discovery that happened in Australia over a decade ago, where they examined cattle that were grazing near the edge of sea borders that were taking in seaweed.
Okay.
And they identified that cattle that were eating and grazing near areas where seaweed showed less methane expulsion. So 95% of methane is actually burped rather than out the back end, right? So, but they identified this finding. And essentially it's been traced to a specific molecule that seaweed produces called tribromomethane. That interferes with this methanogenesis enzymatic cycle that happens in the rumen of cattle. So what we are doing is really taking a synthetic chemistry and pharmaceutical approach of that molecule that was identified in seaweed, so essentially inspired by nature, but using modern biotechnology techniques to harness that and then include into precise feed additives that can be added into cattle feeds in dairy and beef production.
Fascinating. We've seen a lot of work in seaweed, folks farming seaweed to get to the additive to ultimately reduce methane, but you are creating it synthetically.
Correct. So we feel the benefits of creating it synthetically are on kind of multiple fronts. One, scalability and efficiency, right? Trying to make a product as cost effective as possible. So synthetic chemistry allows for us to create a very inexpensive, highly scalable solution. And then it also allows us that precision of how much we can administer to the animal, how we can formulate, and how we can look to expand into kind of all types of cattle production systems.
Lucas, we've seen just a tremendous amount of focus on sustainability, particularly in greenhouse gas emissions in cattle. And would love your perspective. Is this a function of us advancing science to a point where we can intervene? Or is it more of a focus on now we have the science to identify that methane is a problem? Or is it a little bit of both? Like what's driven this rise in focus?
Yeah, so I think it is both. I think there's been the identification increases as has gone up. Technologies have advanced as far as being able to detect and quantify different emission sources of greenhouse gases, and cattle being one of that. And some of this is the scientific discovery piece around how to intervene in this space and how to make a difference and how that drives that. And I think overall, there's a focus in the ag and animal health industry on trying to essentially push sustainable practices into the future so we can meet kind of all the demands globally for meat and milk production as that continues to increase. But how do we do that and minimize carbon footprint, as well as being able to leave kind of legacy farming for that next generation and make this sustainable practices for the future?
Sure. How do you think about it when you talk about a feed additive? By definition, you're adding something to feed. Mm-hmm. An ingredient, but also a cost. How do you see this playing out in terms of the income statement for the rancher or the farmer that is using Rumin8 technology to feed their cows?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I go back to our central approach of what we're trying to target as a product is one that provides that methane reduction in a strong fashion so that we can harness that back into energy.
Okay.
We do it at a low cost. Hopefully, we do it at a cost point where the producer pays for the product and they see 2, 3, 4, 5x return based on productivity of using that. In addition, there's these evolving kind of carbon credit marketplaces for use of products like this. So any value of these carbon credit marketplaces can be factored into that equation on use of products like this.
And you've got a bold vision. I love the website. 100 million cows by 2030. Decarbonize 100 million cows by 2030.
Correct. It's bold, but that's our mission.
I love it. And if I remember right, there is a metric on here on the website. If I get this right, 100 million. That would be the equivalent to 100 million gas-powered cars. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Before the end of the decade.
Yep. That's what we're trying to do.
I love it. Now, you mentioned Australia. These cows grazing along the seaboard. You have had an amazing career in animal health. You and I first got to know each other when you were with Elanco here in Indiana. How did you find these guys? How did they come on your radar to say, this is a place that I want to go chase?
Sure. Yeah. Through my work at Elanco, I was very involved in this space, right? Sustainability and cattle production, and that's how this company first came on my radar. Been following through the years as they progressed, and really they were able to obtain some well-known venture capital funding through very climate-focused venture capital groups, Breakthrough Energy Innovations, which is Bill
Iconic.
Gates's. It was
iconic.
very iconic and really increased the kind of magnitude and visibility of the company. And they had really strong results. And my scientific background, I really thought it was a rational approach to try to solve the problem. So the ability to come in at the beginning of the year and lead the R&D group as they've pivoting out of this phase of research and proof of concept. They've shown this in multiple studies across the globe now with some of the leading academic researchers in this space and produce some really compelling results. And now we're trying to take those results into formal development of animal health pharmaceutical products. So starting to interact with the different regulatory agencies around the globe, and how do we get this to market as fast as possible to meet that mission statement of our goals by 2030.
Let's pick up on the regulatory environment and this challenging patchwork landscape that exists within animal health. We'll do it right after this. Agbioscience is supported by Indiana Farm Bureau.
From berries to dairies, from crop advisors to data analyzers, Indiana Farm Bureau is at the forefront of the top issues impacting Indiana agriculture. No matter your role in the ag industry, Indiana Farm Bureau membership means you'll always have a champion and an advisor. And because so much of your time is focused on your own enterprise, it's also good to know Indiana Farm Bureau is always working to fight for the future of agriculture. We come together to advocate for rural viability, the protection of property rights, competitive tax policies, and against burdensome regulations. Whether our members need a door opened, an impact in public policy, or an ally to strengthen their communities, Indiana Farm Bureau is there. We are the unified voice for all agriculture. To learn more about the benefits of Indiana Farm Bureau membership, go to infb.org.
Welcome back to Agbioscience. We're talking with Dr. Lucas Huntimer, R&D lead for Rumin8. Lucas, we were just talking about this patchwork, this navigating of a regulatory environment. Recently been with U.S. Senator Todd Young, who's working on some legislation to really begin to help simplify, maybe streamline is a better way to say, this regulatory pathway that has become a patchwork, not just here in the States, but all around the globe. Talk about the challenges for a young animal health company navigating. It's not just one federal agency, right? It's multiple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Animal health is unique, right? In that is a highly regulated environment. Depending on the technology, what you're targeting, species, right? You may have interactions with Food and Drug Administration, Environmental Protection Agency, as well as U.S. Department of Agriculture, and sometimes all three, right, at once, depending on products like that. A product like ours, focusing on a feed additive, directly mitigating methane emissions in cattle, we're obviously interacting with different regulatory agencies throughout the globe. Here in the U.S., we're having those discussions with FDA on how to effectively develop our product, ensure target animal safety,
right,
human food safety, as well as that efficacy and productivity that we're striving for in the product. So there is certain legislation proposed that's out there, Innovative Feed Acts, which is pretty exciting, which allows for a process to be implemented in the U.S. That is similar to other countries in the world, where it's essentially classification as a zootechnical feed additive approach. So a feed ingredient, but directed towards greenhouse gas emissions or some other functionality in that respect. So, but you're correct. It's a complicated space, and different parts around the globe have different regulations and different pathways, and we're navigating those areas.
When we were together last, we were in Boston for the Animal Health Innovation Conference, and that was so interesting. So many people there driven by this, I'd say, drive, motivation to make an impact on the environment, make an impact on food supply chain. We talk about it all the time. Only economy in the world that touches every person on the planet. It's this. Yet there was so much attention being paid to pet health. And so as you're out, you mentioned Breakthrough Energy as somebody who's on the cap table today. As you grow and you scale the company, you're out talking with investors, you're out talking with partners and collaborators. How is the story resonating? There's so much attention on pet health, but the impact to actually drive long-term meaningful change, both in the food supply chain and the environment, is here in livestock.
Yeah. Yep. I think impact is the correct word, right? We can make an impact on climate change quickly. Methane, again, being such a potent ability to trap heat in the atmosphere, approximately 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. By making impacts in methane, we can make large impacts on climate change early on, right? So I think that's one big key piece of this. The other key piece is this is an emerging marketplace in farm animal. Farm animal side of the animal health equation has not had a lot of emerging markets develop, right? It's been pretty focused on disease prevention and optimizing efficiency for growth and productivity, which are all key to sustainable practices, absolutely. But this is a new space and a new emerging market. So those emerging markets get attention. And that's partially why pet health side of the business is growing so much. They're leveraging emerging markets that are coming off innovations from human health being brought down into animal health, and new therapies and approaches entering that space. So that's where I think a lot of that energy is in these emerging marketplaces.
Well, you've looked at these emerging markets. I mean, you and I first met when you were looking at emerging markets at Elanco. What is the view today? I mean, this is a very broad landscape from pet health to livestock to farm animal. What does the current animal health industry look like at the most abstract, and where do you see the most opportunity?
Yeah. Animal health industry has been a relatively stable industry. It has a pretty steady growth, and some of it's dependent on different kind of aspects of what's happening in that industry. So the pet health side of the business obviously growing at a steeper curve at the moment, so they're getting a lot of attention, right? But farm animal continues to grow. As I mentioned before, the demand for meat, milk, and protein sources increases as more people enter into that middle class globally. Those demands increase, so that demand on animal production increases. But all aspects of farm animal are upon improving efficiency and productivity and minimizing carbon footprint will all kind of efficiently optimize that space and move forward.
So Lucas, we could talk at length about this challenge of environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, what's in it for the rancher. I think there's a lot more there to unpack, but we don't have time to do all of that. So I maybe want to zoom out here a bit and just get your perspective. You've been in a number of big companies. You're now in a much smaller company. There are a lot of entrepreneurs listening, a lot of big company leaders listening. What are some of those things that maybe you have learned from going from big to small and had this experience? Are there any big takeaways that you say, gosh, if I would have only known this sooner, I'd be a more effective animal health scientific leader?
Yeah. Yep. I think being bold, right?
Okay.
Is a good learning. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good either, right? If you've got a concept and an idea, obviously you want to hone that in, but knowing when to move forward and taking that next step, and maybe it's 80% of the way there, but taking that next step and incrementally moving it forward and producing it, that time you save by being bold and aggressive and doing that pays off. Yeah.
That's good. It's good to see. Well, we were cheering you on from the sidelines. Dr. Lucas Huntimer, the R&D lead at Animal Health Innovator. Rumin8. Lucas Dawson be with you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Agbioscience. You can always get the latest Agbioscience news from discussions just like this by subscribing wherever you get your podcast. And while you're online, don't forget to check us out at agrinovusindiana.com. On behalf of the entire Agrinovus team, I'm Mitch Frazier, saying thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you real soon.
Agbioscience is a podcast by Agrinovus Indiana, hosted by Mitch Frazier, produced by Kayla Chittister and Fabian Rodriguez. Photography and design by Kaylee Kerr. If you liked today's episode, subscribe, rate, and review so we can bring you more conversations just like this. Get all episodes of Agbioscience at agrinovusindiana.com.